The World Superbike Championship moves away from Misano to the United Kingdom, where outside East Midlands Airport, it's at Donington Park for the UK round of this year's 2025 World Superbike Championship. Let's get ready for all of the action then and hand over to our commentators down at the World Feed.
With Sam Lowe's best of the rest and somewhat isolated in that 6th place, and then a big group of riders from 7th place down. But up at the top, Nicolo Bulliger was managing his margin. He seemed to be in relative control, but a key moment last time out in Misano, the Super Pole race, means that Toprak Razgatlioglu's gains are much bigger than they would have been if Bulliger had been able to record 3 second places.
Yeah, we had a bit of bad luck for Bulliger last time out. Himself and Axel Bassani turn 1 in that Super Pole race, but it's played into our hands, and we've got a really exciting championship battle that the entire paddock expects to go to the wire, and it'll be potentially a proper title decider by the time we get to Jerez. And the reason for that is Bulliger and Toprak have just separated themselves from the rest of the pack. They are very clearly 1 and 2 right now, and that's what gives them the advantage coming into each weekend.
Yes, we said it at the top of the programme in Most, didn't we, that Toprak, when he was winning, he was able to pull back a few points. Most, he was able to win race 1 and the Super Pole race, but losing race 2 meant that he could only make a few points over the course of the weekend. This was big points gains for Toprak because Nicolo Bulliger crashes out of the Super Pole race. 9 at very least points lost, possibly 12 obviously, and Toprak goes away to take a hat-trick during the weekend. So very costly this for Nicolo Bulliger.
Yeah, and the reason it's costly as well is it pushes you back onto the 4th row of the grid to start the second race on Sunday, which means that there's a compound factor for Bulliger last weekend as well. But at the end of the day, they both had some bad luck through the course of the season so far. I think 9 points in Bulliger's favour is about right for what we've seen through the course of the season so far. But now we get set up for 6 rounds that should be really exciting Superbike racing.
Yes, if anything, slightly fortunate for Toprak, I would suggest, because there have been 2 weekends where he's had misfortune, but he's also not looked particularly strong in Phillip Island and Assen, whereas Bulliger cost himself big points on the Sunday, or had big misfortune on Sunday in Assen, and then the Super Pole race, which is completely not his fault either. So Bulliger will probably feel a little bit hard done by that his championship margin isn't bigger than it is, but he does still lead the reigning world champion, and the second half of the campaign it's still all to play for.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be really exciting to see what happens for the rest of it, just to see how Bulliger deals with that pressure as well. He's into his 2nd year. We know that he can win a world championship, but he's going up against Toprak, and we know that Toprak right now is as good as anyone in the world and as dominant as anyone in the world. But you're up against him. You've got a bit of a bike advantage with the Ducati versus the BMW. But Bulliger, you can't take anything away from the job he's done this year. Really has been impressive.
And Toprak as well. Absolutely sensational just to be in the position that he's in. We knew that the mid-phase of the season was going to be really important for him. Most, Misano, Donington Park, circuits where he dominated for a hat-trick last year. He didn't get the hat-trick in Most, and at the time, it was anticipated that that could be very costly not to have won that race too. A 10-point swing that Nicolo Bulliger was able to benefit from in the run to the line in that race too on the Sunday afternoon. But he did get the hat-trick over the line last time out in Misano, and as a result, he has the opportunity to take the championship lead this weekend.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, it's very clear to see that the Toprak we have now is very different from what we had last year. The bike has changed completely. It doesn't have the ability to allow Toprak to ride as comfortably on it, but it also gives us the chance to see him having to push to his best, ride as well as he can. You can see Michael van der Mark on the number 60 machine just leaving pit lane. It's easy to forget Van der Mark was 6th in the world last year, won a race, had some podiums, had a really strong season. This year he's shown just how difficult the BMW is, which again also illustrates just how good of a job Toprak's doing.
Danilo Petrucci, you can see there 3rd in the championship standings at present. He's been a top 5 finisher at each of the races in Most, obviously 3 podiums for him there, and then 3 top 5 finishes last time out in Misano. He leads that secondary group. But it is very much head-to-head between Nicolo Bulliger and Toprak Razgatlioglu. And coming into the UK round, which, like Most and to a lesser extent Misano, the last 2 race weekends, is one where Toprak Razgatlioglu would be expected to have the upper hand. And any points that Bulliger takes from Toprak during this weekend will be a boost to his hopes.
Yeah, exactly. And for Bulliger, it's one of those situations where he knows the importance of this weekend, because this is one of the places Toprak expects to be really strong. If he's able to do a little bit like Moss, take 1 race win, he's been able to have a good weekend.
Here we pick up Petrucci then, as I said, 3 podiums for him in Moss. Just the one in Misano in race 1, but keeping up that consistency of top 5 finishes. He wasn't quite as strong in Assen or Cremona, but the other 4 rounds, he's been a regular front runner. I think it's fair enough that he finds himself 3rd in the championship and ahead of Alvaro Bautista. That's some achievement for Petrucci.
Yeah, the Sunday in Assen was tough. Obviously, he had a podium in race 1, but then Sunday outside the top 10. And for Petrucci, what we've seen so far this season is a very competitive and consistent season. He's 3rd in the World Championship for a reason. And he's one of the riders that's quite interesting to keep an eye on right now as well, because he's key in the rider market. Does he want to leave Barney Ducati to go for more money on a factory seat somewhere else, like BMW to replace Toprak, or is it more important to be on the most competitive bike possible? He seems so happy at Barney. I'd be surprised if he were to move, but if you throw all that money in front of a rider, it's always easy to be tempted by it.
Yes, plenty still to come. As we see yellow flags are out here in free practice 1, right on the first flying lap, so riders having to be a little bit cautious through the opening 2 turns.
Yeah, we saw green flag or green light on the light boards outside of turn 1 there, so it's for Domi Aguilar. That looks like it's up at turn 1, and that would have been the yellow flag that we saw go out.
Yes, so early minutes of free practice 1, and far from ideal for Dominic Egerter, who really has had a rough run of late, to say the least. Just looking to get back and start fighting in the top 10 again in World SBK.
Yeah, for Domi, it's just been a really tough year, and he's one of the riders that you know is basically having very little options for next year right now. Maybe a return to Supersport, where he's been able to win a World Championship. You can see his crash here. Just runs off at turn 1. The gravel trap is quite deep there, and Domi falls in that one. There should be minimal damage done to the bike, but it takes away some of that confidence straight away.
Yeah, and signs of frustration there for Egerter, who had decent weekends, it must be said, in Portimao and Assen, regular top 10 finisher over those 2 rounds, but not been going his way in the 3 rounds since then. And here he is wheeling the bike away through the gravel trap. At least he's close to the pit straight, of course, being at turn 1. That might be the only consolation.
Yeah, access point from there is actually really handy to get back to the pit, so hopefully for him he's able to get it restarted and get himself back out there soon.
As I said, 3 riders' contract extensions announced, taking them into 2026. The biggest of those is Sam Lowes, because it's a 2-year deal for him, extending with Mark VDS, and obviously he's had a long relationship with the team since 2020 in Moto2 first of all, and then bringing him across to World SBK last season. And Sam has made a step forward this season, that much more consistent in those top 6-7 positions, knocking on the door of the podiums, and obviously the rostrum finishing the Superpole race at the Dutch round back in April as well, one of the highlights.
Yeah, pretty much always a top 6 runner through the course of this season. It was interesting, before it was announced that he had signed that 2-year extension, Ducati did actually check in the prospects of bringing him to replace Alvaro Bautista as well, but obviously very happy in the Elf Mark VDS setup. You'd imagine that's going to have more and more support coming from Ducati as well, and that's only going to help them.
Gary Montella extends with Barney. I don't think that's too much of a surprise. He's done a decent job in his rookie campaign with plenty of top 10 finishes, 3 8th places in the last 2 rounds, obviously 2 retirements on Sunday in Misano. I think for season 2 for Montella, it's about doing that more consistently, not having those odd problems and incidents that occasionally he's got involved in. But I think for a first campaign, it doesn't look great in terms of point standings, in 16th position. The fact that he's had those top 10 finishes is what's earned him his contract for next year.
Yeah, exactly. He's had 7 or 8 top 10 finishes, so it's been a decent rookie year. He's done probably a better job than was expected of him on his good days, but his bad days have been pretty poor. And for Jari, it's about trying to probably make himself where he's always in that top 10 to 12 positions, and then into next year you're able to try and kick on from 10 to 12 to 8th to 10th, and then you just get more and more competitive all the time.
And the third of those riders who I said has extended their contract into next season is Garrett Gerloff. He remains with Kawasaki. They've locked him in pretty early in the campaign. Last 2 rounds have been a step forward for Gerloff. We often see this, don't we? Midway through the season, he makes a little bit of progress, and obviously this season he's learning a completely new package. So he had a 10th place finish in race 2 in Most, an 8th place finish in race 2 in Misano. The fact that he's finishing weekends better than he's starting them means he is starting to make up some ground.
Yeah, bumped into Garrett just walking up through the paddock yesterday just to say well done on the new contract, and the big question mark is going to be whether or not he has a teammate next season, and he wants to have a teammate to be able to compare data to. We come here to Donington Park, for instance, and already this early in the day it's 25 degrees out. This is going to be a lot hotter than it was last year. he can't look at last year's data for Axel Bassani and Alex Lowes and try and make a comparison for that. He's out there totally on his own this year. You need to have that teammate that you can compare things to. He knows that the Kawasaki could be a good package, and it's just a case of can they still continue to develop it.
Yeah, the fact that he doesn't have a teammate makes it tricky in contract negotiations as well, because if you're at the top of the championship, then it's an easy case to make. But if you're 17th on points, then you need to be able to say, well, look, this is the bike, I'm beating my teammates or whatever. But he can't prove whether it's the bike or whether it's him, because he's got no one alongside.
And it's also one of those things where you can look at Axel Bassani's performances as well, and we saw Axel last year really have a tough time on that bike. This year he's been a lot more competitive. He's been a lot closer to Alex Lowes over a single lap. That again shows you that the Kawasaki isn't the easiest bike to ride anymore like it was 7 or 8 years ago.
A lot of change for MIE Honda this weekend. In fact, completely new lineup for this round at least. Tito Rabat comes in to replace Taz McKenzie. That's a permanent change to their lineup. McKenzie had already announced his departure, but a change there and unfamiliar colours, as you can see on your screen, for Tito Rabat. And we've also got Ivo Lopez standing in. He comes in for Zakwan Zaidi, who has got a clash for the Asia Road Race Championship. And I think the Estoril round later in the season also clashes, so it'll be interesting to see how the team negotiates that later on. But for Tito, good to have him back on the grid. A shame that things didn't work out for Taz McKenzie as he would have hoped in World Estoril. Yeah,
it's a shame for Taz, but after 3 years here, he's got a Supersport race victory to his credit, and he'll go back to, in all likelihood, racing BSB or try and get himself into a different situation here for the rest of the season if there's a replacement ride available. But for Taz, it's been so difficult for him on that bike. The difference between the MIE Honda and the HRC Honda is Iannone looked like he ran off there at turn 7 or 8, but the difference between those two bikes is so stark that I think Taz actually did a really good job at times on that bike. We saw him able to challenge the HRC bikes, but ultimately for a rider that's been able to win British championships, win a lot of superbike races in BSB, it's very difficult to find that motivation when you know that you're going to be at the back end of the field. Taz is a popular rider in the paddock amongst the riders as well, so I think everyone's looking forward to seeing what he does next.
The reality is nobody's done better than him on that bike for quite a lot of years, so it's not like he's underperformed or something like that. If anything, the bike has never quite delivered to his expectations either, and the team is in a difficult situation because when you're at the back, inevitably it's hard to then attract riders who could help you to move forward, so it's a vicious circle. But with McKenzie, at least, as you say, he did have that race victory in Supersport to prove what he's capable of, just never quite had the package here in this class to make some progress and be a regular in the points paying position.
It's interesting as well, though, you just see Toprak have a little bit of a moment down through Craner there, but it's interesting as well that we're here in Donington this weekend. Obviously that means that comparisons to BSB are always going to be right this weekend. But when we see Brad Ray go back to BSB and dominate the way that he's done, Taz can go and do the same as well. If he goes back to racing BSB, we'll see that he is a better rider for his experience of racing here on World Championship level, and he'll be able to go and win a lot of races there again and challenge for another championship.
Yeah, it has the potential to be great for BSB, doesn't it? If McKenzie lands there, and a lot of talk that Scott Redding could land there as well in the future, and that would kind of be common sense, you feel, at this stage. Obviously, he's had a substitute ride last weekend. So, yeah, there could be a lot of competition at the front there at last for Brad Ray, who's, as you said, starting this season like a steam train.
Yeah, I had a chat with Scott yesterday about it all as well, and obviously going back to race at Knockhill last week gives a lot of question marks about what Scott's going to do for the rest of the season. Is he going to stay here in World Superbikes, or is he going to move himself back to BSB? Because he will have the option to challenge to win races in BSB. If you win enough races at this stage of the year, you can still get into the showdown, so he'll think that there's a chance there in BSB this year. And obviously for him in Worlds, it's been a really tough season. For the Bonovo team, there's a lot of question marks, and for Scott, he's going to have to field a lot of questions this weekend about whether or not he'll be on the bike in 2 weeks' time in Hungary.
Talking about substitute riders, we've got our own super sub in pit lane this weekend at Donington Park. Welcome back to Anthony Nelson.
Thank you indeed, Alex, and I'm here with Sven Blush here in the Rocket BMW Motor Admiral SPK team box. And Sven, a huge weekend we were just talking about right now, given the pace that the BMW and Toprak have had here at Donington Park in the past, and given the situation, a championship coming out of Misano.
Yeah, I think we are back in the championship game now. So we really want to push for a good weekend. With the temperatures, I think we struggled a bit in the beginning of the season with high temperatures, but I think we have this under control as well, and I have a good feeling. And if you see the session times at the moment, I think we are again in front as well.
I saw both riders came in after their outlap. Was any quick feedback there, or was that the plan from the start?
Sorry, can you?
The both riders came into the box after their outlap. Was that the plan from the start? Was there any feedback in terms of the track conditions in that first lap?
No, it was just installation lap, all good from that side, everything as planned, and now we go and give it a try. We have some updates from our side where we think that this might work as well, so yeah.
And then it's been 4 weeks in Misano. I know you've been keeping busy in these 4 weeks. You were at Atten, and I think it's fair to say that wasn't just a pleasure trip, that was a bit more business focused. Can you tell us a bit more about what came out of that visit?
Yeah, for sure. We are looking at the moment on all rider markets, and the paddock here is important for us, but also the GP paddock. I think it will take another 2 to 3 weeks to have a good feeling which direction it is going, but yeah, for sure in Assen it was quite interesting to talk to a couple of managers. Yeah, we will see.
Just out of interest, given the style of the riders, are you more interested in Moto2 or MotoGP riders with a bit more experience?
I check both, to be honest. So in the end, you look for experienced riders, you look for young guns who are, I think, on their way, maybe not going to GP, and understood the situation, how great the World Superbike can be. I think also the move from Toprak now going to GP shows the quality of riders here, and it's actually a really great place to be, also for Moto2 riders.
Just a word on Mike, because obviously you're looking at riders. We're talking about Toprak seat, but his isn't confirmed so far either. At the moment, are you looking for one rider, or are you looking for two?
We're in constant talks with all the riders, also with Mikey, so I can't give you an update on that side at the moment.
Well, best of luck this weekend. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks.
The reality is even no update is a form of update, isn't it? Because if there is no update, that means all the options are on the table. And frankly, you read the media, and even in that conversation, pretty much everyone being linked with that bike, and that's because almost everyone's an option at the moment. You know, there's class riders in World SBK out of a seat at the moment for next season that have got to be an option. There are MotoGP riders who could look to come here and be on a bike that won the championship last season. And there's the possibility that you heard there in that interview with Sven of riders in Moto2 who don't have the opportunity to step to MotoGP, and their way, their pathway could be into World SBK to challenge for race victories. So someone's going to be right, because I think everyone's thrown enough mud at the wall that something's going to stick at some point. But at the moment, the options really are open for BMW.
Yeah, they really are. And when you look at the options that are available to them, Moto2 is obviously a good starting point. And as Sven said, that they are looking at options there. Aaron Canet is the most likely option, because Canet won't get a MotoGP seat. And that's going to mean that he's the best placed rider to move from that championship potentially. He's also the yardstick with which you judge everyone in that class by now as well. Jake Dixon is probably the other option, because Jake is another rider that's not going to get a MotoGP seat. Does he want to stay and try and win a Grand Prix World Championship, or does he want to come here? He faces the same question that Sam Lowe faced a couple of years ago, same for Canada as well. What's more important to you? And for Aaron, maybe now is the time to make the move to Superbikes, because he can go and he can earn probably twice as much money here as he can earn in Moto2. He's at that stage of his career where he knows he's fast, he knows he's competitive, and he could come here and feel that he can challenge at the front. If you're looking at MotoGP riders, it then becomes interesting to see who's available, because everything that you kind of hear on the quiet amongst the paddock is that both Pramac seats are going to be available. The reason for that is obviously Toprak goes to Pramac next year on the Yamaha. It looks like Manuel Gonzalez could well move up. And the reason that Sven's talking about 2 weeks being key, that's when we get to the summer break for MotoGP. When we go to Hungary, MotoGP's in at summer break. That's when all the decisions will be made. And that's whenever our decisions get made, the domino effect. But if you've got Jack Miller, Miguel Oliveira, Brad Binder's name is being linked with BMW as well now, and he's obviously got a contract for KTM, so it just shows you that nobody's off the table right now. And we've obviously seen Marc Marquez, Jonathan Rea, whoever you want to look at. Contracts are important, but there's always ways to get out of them. And BMW makes themselves an attractive proposition for a lot of different riders. You can see Andrea Iannone running off for the second time in this session. Iannone is trying to find a factory seat for next year. Petrucci is an option. Javi Vierge was talking to BMW as well. So everybody is going down to see what the chances are of getting onto that bike, because they know it's going to be a well-paying gig. And Toprak has shown that the right rider can make that bike work. but you also have to have that belief and knowledge that you're able to do what Top Rack can do, and there's not a lot of people that can.
And obviously, the most coveted ride is the second Aruba bike. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It is clearly the fastest package and team at the moment. New bike coming next season as well, so a lot to look forward to there. But if you're not on a Ducati, then it's kind of, to some extent, chase the money, isn't it? Because the Ducati is the one that is going to be the bike to be on. Then it's about, okay, well, what's the best contract to be on? And that's where other teams and other manufacturers have their opportunities to pick up some, again, big name riders available for next season, because of this being a year where all of the contracts align in World SBK. I think one rider who was on a two-year deal that took them into next year, and that's it. Everyone else is jostling around for what next season might look like.
Yeah, exactly, and it is one of those situations where the Aruba seat is the one to be on, but it's not the contract to be on. You're going to get a low base salary, and that's why a lot of riders aren't finding it that appealing to make the switch to the Aruba team. That's where maybe being an independent Ducati rider pays more, and you've still got the Ducati underneath you that can be very competitive. We've seen it obviously for Petrucci, third in the championship this year. We've seen that for Sam Lowe's up there, sixth in the championship. An independent Ducati can challenge at the front. Iannone won a race on one last year. Petrucci obviously won 3. So for all those riders, they know that they're good seats to have. And then the question becomes, where else is a good seat to go or a good contract to get? Honda's the key one right now, because if you become the rider that unlocks the potential of the Honda, you're a legend. And you get to do for Honda what Top Rack did for BMW, and it's an appealing seat for a lot of different riders.
Yes, not least because there's nothing to lose in that opportunity, is there? Because if you go there and you do badly, it's the bike. If you go there and do a great job, then it's, as you said, you're a legend, you're the hero. What was it we were saying the other day? It's 3 podiums between the 2 riders they've got at the moment. In that spell, Alvaro Bautista had 3 before that, and then you're looking all the way back to 2016. So nobody's made a difference. Bautista maybe has done a little bit more than anyone else in the 10 years. But apart from that, and even him, 3 podiums is not exactly what a rider of his class would be looking for either.
Yeah, the thing with it is, we're now, 4 years into the Vierge and Lecona partnership, and the only thing that we know right now is they're good riders, and the bike is good. But are they being held back by the bike, or are they holding back the bike? And no one really knows at this stage. And that's 4 years into their time in World SBK. And when you look at, the likes of Iker and Javi, they've got, 115 starts each, thereabouts. So we've got a lot of information about them, but you still don't really know for sure, and that's where it becomes really interesting to see who jumps onto that Honda. And the big name that we're hearing here at Donington this weekend, and this is a massive weekend for Johnny, is that Jonathan Rea and Honda could well be the possibility, and it's the one that makes the most sense for both, because Johnny on the Yamaha, it just isn't working, and I still believe that Jonathan Rea is still the Johnny Rea, 6 World Championships, all those race wins. He can be that rider if he's on the right package. Maybe the Honda is that package for him.
We're going to come back to that in a moment, because I think there's a lot to dissect there. Just want to run you through the free practice 1 standings, because everyone's in the pits aside from Dominic Egerter, who's made his way back out onto track now. FP1, first stint completed. Alex Lowe's leads the way, 1 minute 26.5. Top Rack Razgatlioglu a 10th behind. Bulliger 2/10 behind Alex, so really hitting the ground running at his home round here, Alex Lowe's. Petrucci, Ryan Vickers and Scott Redding, both inside those top 6 places at the moment. Then Sam Lowe's, Garrett Gerloff, Jonathan Rea, Jari Montella rounding out your top 10. So a few riders with their home round this weekend, familiar venue here at Donington Park, but the times are fast. So that does bode well for Alex Lowe's, but also for Ryan Vickers doing a great job in P5 and Scott Redding in P6. As I said, bit of a calm moment in free practice 1 at the end of the first stint for most of the riders. Only Dominic Egerter circulating and out of sync with the rest following his crash in the early minutes, but good to see him back out on circuit. So this is a good opportunity to head down to pit lane with Anthony.
Thanks, Alex. Sorry, Alex, I'm down here with Javier Beltran, who is the team manager for Honda Racing UK, here with Tommy Bridewell here this weekend at Donington Park. But you've been working alongside the Honda World Superbike project for the last couple of years here. I want to ask you, well, firstly, the first feeling from Tommy. Obviously, he's giving us feedback right now to the engineers here, but going back to Donington Park, coming back into the World Superbike paddock.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to be here. It's great to be able to support the official team. Obviously, we are here from a development point of view with a development package and bike. The crew, have been putting together for the last 12, 18 months, and combines of the development crew and 3 or 4 people from the BSB side of it. But like I say, it's a growing project with much more to come over the next 12 months.
Tell us a bit about how it basically came to be, this development project, because it's something quite new as well for the Honda UK side to be working alongside the World Supers side. Tell us a bit about the impact you can also bring to their project.
Yeah, I think it all stems at the end of the day. The Honda UK project is run, controlled, financed, if you like, by HME Honda UK. And the relationship that we have with Japan and HRC Kumamoto R&D made it a process that was work for both sides, really. And the fact that to be involved with the development of the bike and the development of the bike for the future is a great project for us all to be involved in. Like I said, it's about supporting the factory team and the development side outside of the events. We obviously have done a couple of wildcards. Let's say, well, Phillip Island is obviously going to be here, and looking at 1 or 2 others later on in the year.
So you've done these wildcards obviously with Tetsuya Nagashima and with Tom. Last year was essentially the same thing. You were talking though about an ongoing project and a growing project. Is there an idea to make this more of a permanent presence, let's say, on the grid in the near future?
Not so much of a race team, but for sure a bigger development team. The challenge is recruiting great team members and people and the professional attitude and the know-how and everything else. And that's not something that you can just do overnight. Like I say, the project has been we're working on for a few months now, and now that it's out in the open and that we're here, and it's a great opportunity to speak to people from other disciplines and other manufacturers to help grow this project.
Well, thank you for your time and enjoy the weekend. Tommy's just going out right now.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yes, we haven't talked about Tommy Bridewell's presence before now, so that's a good opportunity to introduce the topic. 2023 British champion and runner-up last season, just a point from the title, wasn't he, with Honda UK last year. And as Anthony touched on there, has had World SBK appearances, Cremona and Jerez last year. And maybe here at Donington Park he can be a little bit more involved. I know when he made his appearances in 2019 on the Ducati, did a really strong job to be able to get up into the top 10 and over the course of those 2 weekends. So let's see what he can do here.
Yeah, Tommy's a good rider, and obviously for Honda UK it's another good opportunity for them to come in with the development team for this weekend. They do put a lot of resources into that. It looks like they're trying to expand their factory out in Louth as well, only a couple of hours down the road from Donington. And Michael van der Mark with a big moment there in the entry into the loop. But for Honda, it's important to have that development as well, because they need to be able to push it forward. And Honda UK has Superbike experience. A lot of what we see from Team HRC here in World Superbikes over the course of the last 7 or 8 years has been MotoGP people moving across. And obviously there's a benefit for that now with the super concessions. You're able to develop and change a bike like we saw with BMW with their frame last year. But overall you do need to have Superbike people working on the bike, and Honda UK has that.
Yes, as we pick up Bridewell now, his 7th appearance in the World SBK Championship, actually his first UK round since Silverstone 2010. Obviously Donington Park certainly familiar territory for him. He runs P18 at the moment. Still got 19.5 minutes to go in this free practice one, but Alex Lowe's leading away 1:26.544. Fast times to start the weekend here at the UK round.
Really fast. We're only about 0.6 of a second off what we did in free practice last year, and that's with everyone out there on the zero tyre, the harder tyre. So we're going to have some fast times this weekend, and you'd imagine by the time we get to the Super Bowl session tomorrow that will be right down to lap record pace. But we're going to have great weather here at Donington this weekend. It's going to be hot. It's going to be perfect for fans out on the banking here around Donington, but it's going to be tough for the riders.
I'm sure that Pirelli want to put as many lap records down on the board as they possibly can before the already announced departure and obviously switch of tyre manufacturers across World SBK and MotoGP.
It's going to be really interesting when that happens as well. Obviously Pirelli moving to MotoGP, Michelin coming to World Superbikes. That's going to be a key to creating that performance differential that you want to see between MotoGP and World Superbikes, because it will allow us to be that little bit different with what we're doing in terms of tyre development. And I know that the goal with the new regulations for MotoGP, obviously switching to 850s in 27, the goal is that they're going to be about 1.5 seconds faster than what we have on the Superbike grid. The easiest way to control that is with tyres, and that's where there's a lot of manufacturers and a lot of people in the paddock quite excited for the change to Michelin just for that reason.
Sam Lowe's just coming across the line to set a new personal best for him, 127.132. And as always, plenty of attention on Lowe's at a home round. Plenty of riders and teams and so on that would consider this a home round. But for Sam, this is an opportunity to challenge again for the podium places.
Yeah, he's had a great year. His future secured. He knows that he's knocking on the door of being able to be a regular podium contender. And it's always easy to discount what he did in the Grand Prix world, but you know, no one's had more poles in Moto 2. He's been able to win races. He's been able to dominate races in the Moto 2 class at times. That shows his speed. Now he's got the confidence back. But more than anything, he's got the belief of the team. And that's a big factor for a rider like those. He lives and dies on his confidence. And whenever he feels that the team has that belief in him, he feels 10 feet tall and he's able to get good results. What we saw at somewhere like Assen with the pole position, you can expect something similar in tomorrow's Super Pole session from those. Always good on a Q tyre. Winning races at the British Grand Prix was always his goal when he was Grand Prix rider. He knows that he'll have a chance here at Donington in his home round to be able to do something similar.
Yeah, I wouldn't bet against him for that pole position. Assen, as you said, he managed pole. He was 4th on the grid there last season. It was his best of 2024. Well, he was also 4th on the grid here at Donington Park last season. So perhaps he can make the 3-place step this weekend as well, as Sam Lowe's comes across the line to start another lap and looking consistent on that pace as well.
Yeah, and in that single lap pace, what we saw this year, think to Cremona as well, when he had a really difficult weekend. He basically didn't do any mileage during the practice sessions, and then he just jumped onto the bike for the qualifying session and put it on the front row. He can do that in a single lap. If he's got a clear run through this weekend, I think he'll feel pretty confident going into that Super Pole session.
It's going to be an important weekend for Andrea Iannone as well. He had a terrible weekend here at Donington Park last year, and he hasn't really got going in 2025 either. 10th position in the standings. Now, part of that is obviously missing the 3 races in Most with a crash in Friday practice. Non-scoring weekend on his return last time out in Misano. Pretty much everything happened at one stage or another, including a jump start and penalties and all sorts. That went on to cost him over the course of the weekend. So for Iannone, 2 scoreless rounds, now a circuit that he really struggled at last season. He needs to set himself up for a better second half of the campaign, because we've only really seen what we were hoping to see from Andrea Iannone on Sunday in Phillip Island.
Yeah, and unfortunately for Iannone, when you look at it over the course of 18 months, we've now got a year and a half, a season and a half of Superbike data about him, and it doesn't make for good reading for Iannone, unfortunately. He's trying to find a seat for next year. He doesn't want to have to bring budget to a team like he's had to do for the last year and a half at Go 11. And if you're a manufacturer, have you seen enough to give you that belief that we can pay Iannone hundreds of thousands of euros to be a top rider in Superbikes? And he hasn't been able to show it, unfortunately.
And as I said, the reality is when you're 10th in the championship and so on, but more importantly, ahead of you in the championship, Petrucci's available, Bautista's available, and then you've got a 6-time world champion available. That's without mentioning any of the riders from MotoGP and Moto2. So if you're going out and spending budget, I would suggest there are riders ahead of Iannone in the queue.
Yeah, there has to be, and it's also a reality for Iannone that 4 years on the sidelines is still a factor, because he's lost out in his prime years of his career, and now he comes back and we haven't been able to see him do it week in, week out in World Superbikes, and manufacturers aren't going to be queuing up to have him. There's a lot of riders in front of him in this queue.
That said, some of his comments in the Italian press have been along the lines of, well, look, if I don't get the bike, if I don't get the pay and so on, I'll just retire. And that would be a shame as well,
yeah,
because he does bring something to the table. He's a unique character. Obviously, he's got a lot of fans and Instagram followers, and so there's a lot of discussion always about that. But on his day, and we saw it in Phillip Island, we saw it a few times last season, he is actually able to go with the likes of Bulliger, go with the likes of Toprak, and the more of those riders we have in World SBK.
His win in Aragon last year was one of the big stories of last season. Iannone, there is still that talent, there is still that potential, and you want to see him on the grid, you want to see him have an opportunity. but he has to earn that opportunity, and he hasn't earned it yet. And that's with a good bike and a good team and a good package. And for Andrea, it's now a question of trying to find that performance, give yourself the opportunity. Everybody wants to see the Iannone that turned up in Phillip Island last year with a massive smile on his face and just happy to be back on his bike. We haven't seen that this year from him. He's been back to the Iannone of old, and he needs to be able to embrace what you can do here in Superbikes to let that character come out, because people want to like him, people want him to be fans.
Is that though because last season he's finding his feet, he has his first podium, he has his first win, and you know, his expectation would have been a lot higher this season, and actually he's gone backwards? I think that's quite a fair analysis. There is the other side of this coin, which is that he regularly said last season, I want a factory bike. The team is not in these words, but the team is a limiting factor. And this season he's been even stronger in making those kind of comments to say, well, look, we've got what we've got, but I could be doing more. He clearly feels that if he were on the second Aruba bike, he would be a lot closer to the front. Now, whether that's true or not, Ducati's always very insistent that all of these teams have the same data, they have the same opportunities, the same bikes and so on. But at least in Iannone's head, factory rider, and he's gone on about that since the moment he arrived here in World SBK. That's the target. The question is there an opportunity for him to be there next year? At the moment,
at Aruba, we know that GG loves him, and that's always been the case, and he's always backed him. But is he the second Aruba rider? Unless they struggle to get other options, then he isn't. There's other riders that they'll choose before him, younger riders, whether that's, you know, the one name that is being linked a lot is German Masia. Whether or not Masia is ready to be the second Aruba rider is irrelevant, because he's going to be in that price range that makes it appealing, because for most of the other riders that are out there, they don't want to ride for the wage that will be offered, whereas a young rider might. Iannone is probably the exception to that, because he will look to be on the best option possible for him if it means a factory Ducati, but he just hasn't done enough to make it appealing yet.
No, but the problem is, how can you promote Petrucci or Iannone into a seat where you've just kicked out a double world champion on that bike in Alvaro Bautista? If you go for German Masia, obviously he's not a direct replacement for Bautista, but at least you can justify that you're going down a different route. You're promoting another super sport rider like you did with Bulliger. Look how that's worked out. And it's justifiable, even if it's not necessarily logical. But if you promote Iannone or Petrucci, there's not much more logic in that, because they're both veteran riders as well.
The one thing is, and the one thing that we're seeing more and more now that dust is really settling, we mentioned it during the Misano weekend, that if you want to be the most competitive option, you keep Bautista. Alvaro hasn't been easy to work with by all accounts. Speaking to people on the quiet within Ducati, the crashes, the incidents, the frustrations. We've seen it between himself and his crew chief, Julio Nava, that even Nava has been visibly frustrated at times this season. And then obviously for next year, they're not going to work together. So for Ducati, they want you to make a change, because you can accept Bautista when he's winning, but when he isn't winning, then the crashes and the damage and all those different things do add up. I still believe that if you want to have the most competitive rider on that bike, you keep Alvaro, because that is very clear.
At least for next year.
For next year, yeah. It's very clear that would be the case. But Ducati also have to look to the future, and the one thing for Ducati is they don't want to miss out on something. And they know with Bulliger they've got their title contender. If they're able to bring forward a young rider, it makes sense to be able to do that. But the problem with it is, what's the goal? You know, is the goal to find the next Bulliger after Bulliger moves to MotoGP, or he stays, whatever way it works out for Bulliger? And that's where Ducati need to make those decisions. This is the second time we've seen a big moment for Toprak, just coming down through Craner curves. He did it when he was behind Iannone earlier in the session as well. And you can see there for
no rice, man.
But for Toprak, that section of the track, it really is blind down there, and he's got so much confidence through that section, but it's easy to run a little bit wide through there and try and cut back across the track just like he did. But for Toprak, we know how much he loves riding around here.
Yes, extending the track as much as possible, but at least they won't be looking for track limits through there. So he's safe to use it if he wants. 9 minutes to go in free practice one. Let's check in briefly. Alex Lowe's leads 126.544, less than a tenth now ahead of Toprak Razgatlioglu. set a new fastest first sector on this lap just gone, but the lap time's gone away from him now. Nicolo Bulliger within 2/10 of the fastest man, Alex Lowes, and then behind Petrucci, Iannone, Sam Lowes. So looking a little bit more like a conventional pecking order, let's say, but a lot of Ducatis up towards the front there. Vickers and Redding directly behind them, also inside the top 8, and then Garrett Gerloff and Jonathan Ray. It's not been a good start to this free practice session for the Hondas, has it? Iker Lecuona P17, Xavi Vierque P18, Tommy Bridewell P19, and we have seen in the past, you know, last season was a poor weekend, the UK round for Honda, and again, this suggests that I'm afraid there hasn't been an awful lot of progress since then.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is one of those situations where World Superbikes is so competitive now, and if you're not able to make that progress week on week, it's really difficult, and everyone gets faster and faster and faster as the season goes on, particularly the Ducati riders and teams with the independent Ducatis. We've already saw it quite a few times this season that the Ducati is the bike to be on. You can see that by the fact that Montella runs in the top 10, Vickers has a decent performance, Lowe's up there, Petrucci up there. Those weekends where the Ducati's working well, it becomes more and more difficult to put yourself in contention to be able to score big points and show the progress that you're making. And some weekends are going to be like that.
You see Nicolo Bulliger having a little bit of an off-track excursion. Still 7 minutes to go in this free practice 1 session. Obviously Bulliger trying to kick on.
I did just hear that, obviously we're looking at Bulliger running wide like this, that Bautista had the same moment Toprak had down through the Craner curves as well. So it is tricky out there. The reason for that is it's already very hot. It's already 35 degrees track temperature. We're only at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's only going to get hotter and hotter. When we look at the free practice times last year, the fastest free practice time was 25.8 from Remy Gardner. We're 7/10 off that with the hard tyre. So if riders go out now at the end of the session and throw in the X tyre, we'll go faster and faster, and it is just an indication of how hard everyone's having to ride from the outset. That's actually one of the things that makes Superbikes quite special right now, and it was one of the things that Brad Ray talked about whenever he moved back to BSB, that every lap in World Superbikes, from the first lap on a Friday until the last lap of a weekend, you have to be on it. And he was talking about following riders to the grid, and they were setting personal best sector times on the run to the grid just to make sure that the bike was working well. That doesn't happen in most other classes. You have to be like that now. The days of being Tom Sykes with a fast lap, a couple of slow laps, fast lap, couple of slow laps, they're long gone now. You need to be on it at all times.
Nicolo Bulliger coming through the final turn. This could be good enough for P1, you know. He's 2/10 down on Alex Lowes, 1:26.544 the time to beat, but he's up on this lap by almost a tenth. Not quite, 1,000th of a second short of Alex Lowes, with still 5.5 minutes to go.
It's interesting as well, the Bulliger fastest of all in the first sector, Toprak fastest in the second, Lowe's fastest in the third sector, Petrucci in the fourth sector. Obviously there are top 4 in the standings as well, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen in the timing tower, but they're all fast in different areas. And then Iannone, the fastest through the speed trap. Speed trap figures don't really matter too much around Donington. It's in and around that 275, 280 k's an hour. This is a circuit where you don't tend to use 6th gear, you're only using 1st through 5th, so it's not about top speed, it's about punch out of corners.
Yeah, Alex Lowes it is who leads the way. He's just coming out now for the final 5 minutes, so an opportunity for him to further improve. But after Bimota's podium since their return last time out in the Super Pole race, and obviously heading to historic Donington Park, big weekend for Alex Lowes, home round for him, plenty to discuss, not least with a Bimota on top at the moment in FP.
Yeah, and for Alex, this is obviously an important weekend. Always goes well here at Donington. He's had podiums on different bikes here in the past. He'll be expecting to challenge on the Bimota as well, but he also knows that it all comes down to qualifying. If he qualifies on those front couple of rows of the grid, he has a chance to contend for a podium. If he's on the 3rd or 4th row, it becomes very difficult on the Bimota.
And I think that's a good correlation to make, because obviously the last 2 rounds, he's been up on the 2nd row of the grid, a 4th in Super Pole in Most and a 5th in Lozano, and he's gone on to, even setting aside the podium in the Super Pole race, a couple of 4th places in race 1, capitalising on that grid position. So if the Super Pole's good, the opportunities are there, but in traffic it becomes a much trickier affair to make overtaking manoeuvres with the respective strengths of the machinery and the bit of a deficit in opportunities to make passes down the straights for the Bimota.
I was speaking to a few people about the Bimota as well, and they've all said that the chassis is good, the frame is good. You can see that with Bassani's improvement in particular. and that is a good step forward. But we also know that aerodynamically it's not particularly good. We can see that by the fact that the Kawasaki of Garrett Gerloff is usually faster through a speed trap. We know that they've got the exact same engine, so that shows that there's still a lot of work to be done to try and figure out the wings, try and figure out how to make the bike a little bit more efficient. But it's so early in their project that it's inevitable that you're not going to have everything at 100%.
But I think at this stage, they've got to be happy with the progress.
I think so.
Yes, Bassani makes a big step forward this season, but now that Alex is getting to grips with it, a fourth and a second, the first two races of the weekend in Misano has probably exceeded expectations for the season, honestly, getting on the podium. A fourth place in Most as well, 2 places on the second row of the grid. When you're sort of best of the rest behind the big 4, big 5 maybe, then I think you're doing a great job if you're in the top 6 at any time at the moment in World SBK.
Yeah, I would definitely think so, and I think that there was probably a lot more expectation on them than they probably warranted, because it is a brand new project. Not getting the concessions, not getting testing days, not getting different things has probably hurt them a lot more than it should have. They are a brand new manufacturer, and I think that the appearance is that because you've got a Kawasaki engine, because it's the Provec team, that everything's plug and play. But what we've seen over the years is that that is not the case. It's a very different package. I think they've done a good job with it.
And the reality for most is you're not beating Bulliger and Toprak, so that's 2 places that nobody can hope to achieve. Then you've got Bautista. He's hard enough to unseat from the podium. Petrucci and Sam Lowes, and then that massive group behind. Locatelli sometimes up there as well to try and beat. Top 5, 6 places really difficult to break into.
I think so, and World Superbikes right now is very competitive, and that's where it becomes really interesting whenever you look to the rider market for next year, because for MotoGP riders looking to make the move, it's not like it was 10 years ago when you knew you were going to jump onto a decent seat and give yourself a chance to win races. Now those riders are looking at it, and it's very clear that they think, this is a chance for me to be the rider that makes a difference. This is the chance for me to go and show my abilities. MotoGP has become more and more about the bike. That's been very clear since ride height devices, aerodynamics have come into play a bigger role. Whereas in World Superbikes, the rider can still make a big difference. And Toprak has proven that. And I think that's what makes this appealing from a sporting perspective for a lot of riders, as well as the fact that 12 rounds versus over 20 and all the travel makes it where this is probably a lot more interesting for riders whenever they get to 29, 30, 32 years of age. They want to come here.
Dare I say it, partially because Toprak's going as well, because you don't want to go up against Toprak or the experience he has on a superbike and at the absolute peak of his career come here and be beaten as a MotoGP rider. But if he goes, well, everything's a little bit more possible, isn't it?
I remember speaking to Eugene Laverty whenever he moved across from Superbikes to MotoGP back in 15, and he said, Johnny's moving to the Kawasaki. You know you're not going to win a world championship against him with the best bike on the grid. So moving to MotoGP was even more appealing at that stage whenever he jumped onto the Open Honda in 15. And it's a bit like that with Toprak now. You know that if Toprak goes, it opens the door, and you've got an opportunity then to be able to fight at the front. Oh. You also know that if Bulliger has his time on the MotoGP bike and it goes well next year, he could be on the MotoGP grid in 27. So you're trying to set yourself up for the chance in a year or two to be really ready to fight for a world championship.
Checkered flag falls, brief scare there for Jonathan Ray, but he gathered it up nicely. He will finish inside the top 10 in this session, although Jari Montella has the opportunity to unseat him now through the final sector. Checkered flag falls on free practice 1 with 3 different manufacturers in the top 3 places. Going to see that moment again for Jonathan Ray.
Yeah, down in towards the Melbourne loop. This is a very easy corner to just lose the front. It's as slow as it gets. You always feel like you can be a little bit faster through that section. You can be a little bit more aggressive, but it's also very easy to have those slides like Johnny had. But it's good to see him recover them. Last year, he wasn't quite recovering them, whereas on the Kawasaki, we saw him almost save a crash every corner at one stage. So he's building that confidence in the bike. But unfortunately for Johnny, it comes down to his confidence in the Super Pole session. We've seen it time and again over the last year. His race times are competitive compared to the other Yamaha riders, but he can't just bite the screen and have that one fast lap. So hopefully for Johnny here this weekend, he's able to do something to be able to give himself a bit of encouragement like last year. But this is a big weekend for him, because this is when decisions have to be made by him and by Yamaha. And publicly, everyone is still saying the right things, that they want to stay together, but this is a massive weekend to make those decisions.
I'm sure it makes sense for either party to stay together for next season. But let's take you through your 3-2-1 as always in free practice 1. Third place for Toprak Raz Gatlioglu. We saw he finished this session in the pit box, but less than 1/10 of a second between your top 3 and only 1,000th of a second between your top 2. Nicolo Bulliger in P2, and it's Alex Lowe's on the Bimotor, who had a strong weekend in Most, another strong one in Misano last time out, and now at his home round, fresh from his first podium in Misano 4 weeks ago, looking good and starting the weekend on top. So really good session that for Alex.
Yeah, really strong from Alex here, and always goes well at Donington, but encouraging for Bimotor to start the weekend strong.
Yeah, we'll see the congratulations there of Scott Redding as they embark on their practice starts down the straight. Alex Lowe's P1 then ahead of Nicolo Bulliger and Toprak Raz Gatlioglu. Then look at the queue of Ducatis, 4th all the way down to 9th. So there's no doubt that Ducati very much starting this UK round on the front foot. Garrett Gerloff rounds out your top 10. Jonathan Ray was displaced by Jari Montella with the Barney Man's final lap. So Jonathan Ray on the second page in P11. Ika Lekwona giving Honda their only consolation. Vierke down in 16th and Bridewell P21 in the end. Alvaro Bautista down in 15th place. So whether he's just running harder tyres or betting something in or whatever, he starts well down the order with all of the Ducatis basically in front of him, and a little bit of ground to recover for him in FP2 this afternoon.
But still, fantastically done for Alex Lowe's. He tops the session here at Donington Park from Nicolo Bulliger in second position. Join us later on then for all the action from the second practice session that's coming your way this afternoon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.